or find somebody who's good who's also trying to break in. They may do it for free or for very little money. I'm more likely to read a, not actually like published on the press, but a comic book put together that's lettered that you've submitted than I am to read your script that you've submitted. And that's simply a matter of time. It just takes longer to read a script. But eventually I'm going to have to see that script, so you need to be practicing. And you need to be whittling it down so it can be read fairly quickly and understood well.
What about the possibility of let's say that your friend has done, you've got an artist and he's done the artwork and you've got your story told visually, but you're concerned that the visual depiction that's there is not necessarily the best presentation of the material. What about the prospect of submitting both the comic book and your original printed script as a combination, so that if the person's going, I think there's a good script in here that's struggling to get out, and they flip to the script and they go, okay, and they can read the script and judge it on its own.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that for that reason, but also because if it is submitted and there is a script, that sends the message you're the writer.
Yeah.
And I am much more likely to pay attention to the writing than I am to pay attention to the art. There was a case fairly recently at Marvel where two guys got together and wrote and drew a comic book about a ninja from the hand. Do you remember what it was called? I don't remember.
The Hand?
I may have just called it Hand. I don't remember.
Or the ninja.
Yeah, and they
the ninja from the hand.
The ninja from the hand. And they did this small, cardstock sort of comic book in black and white and sent it in. And it was short and it looked pretty good, and a whole bunch of us read it. It was the only time I really remember somebody throwing in and a whole bunch of us reading it. Hey, I think it's pretty good. And the artist and the writer both got gigs at Marvel. Short stories on different projects, not together. I think they both wound up doing short stories in Marvel. Nick hired them for Brian Von, no, it's Von Allman.
It is.
David Von Allman.
I know him.
And I forget what the artist's name is, but I think he also got a short story somewhere as well. It was a great selling tool. It was a character that they didn't own a copyright to, so there was absolutely no chance of them publishing it because it was about a Marvel character. But it was their sample piece. They had this kind of cool take on this ninja character that we hadn't seen before, so it worked out great for both of them. Yeah.
This is a question for Peter David about just process. And I'm just wondering, when you're writing a script, how much do you visualize the layout of the page and the panels as you're writing it, and how much do you leave up to the artist?
Almost not at all. When I'm writing a script, I'm looking at it purely more from a pacing point of view. There will be occasions where I'm going for a very, very specific effect. And I will say, okay, this next sequence is spread over 2 pages and will be a triptych, and I will give something very, very specific. But not most of the time, because my feeling is that visualizing the layout, that kind of thing, if the artist doesn't have a stronger visual sense than I do, we have a serious problem. That should, so there will be some writers who will actually do little thumbnails of how they want the panels to go. I don't, because my feeling is that the artist should be able to do a better job of that than I do. So why should I tell him, why should I throw my 2 cents worth in when the chances are that he will come up with something much better than anything that I can conceive? I will indicate angles. For instance, I will say close up, pull back. If I'm going for a specific angle, I'll say over the shoulder shot. If I want something coming directly at the viewer, I will say coming straight at camera is. And I will generally use movie techniques in description, which can sometimes bite you on the ass. I once got pages of a Dreadstar limited series that I was doing. And look at the first page, and it's set on an alien jungle. And I was very, very specific as to how I wanted that page. I even described the panel layout. And I'm looking at this alien jungle, and for no reason that I can figure out, an Apache helicopter is soaring over the jungle, firing missiles at it. And I'm looking at this going, the hell? What is it? And I'm going, why is this in here? And I went and I pulled out my script, and what I had written was, helicopter shot of an alien jungle. Now the artist apparently did not know that a helicopter shot was a shot that is from a high angle and that is moving in very, very, very quickly, such as the opening of the birdcage or Lethal Weapon. But the artist was basically felt, well, Peter David wants a helicopter shot in there, so by God, there's going to be a helicopter shot, even though I have no freaking clue what it's doing in there. And it was a really good helicopter. And I had to contact the editor and say, get this helicopter out of my freaking splash page. So there are dangers. And you have to be very careful when you're using, when you're using this kind of thing in terms of describing to your artist. But in terms of actual page layout, no. That's my feeling is that's the artist's job. He should have a better idea of it than what I'm going to do. And if the artist has a better idea, I'm open to it. And there have been times where the artist says, the artist will contact me and says, I'd like to combine these two panels to make it into one panel, and 9 times out of 10, I have no problem with it. I ascribe to the same philosophy that Kurt Busiek had, which was, he says to artists, if you don't rewrite my story without asking, I won't go in and redraw your faces without asking, which seems to me fairly, fairly reasonable.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Stand up, because otherwise I'm...
All right.
In large part due to publishing on the internet, there's a lot of people like me now who are complete and total control freaks and have to write and draw and edit and publish all that stuff, and it's really borderline psychotic. But I constantly find myself having to answer the question, well, this is pretty good. Why aren't you submitting to Marvel? And then I have to explain, well, actually, that's not really very realistic. Marvel does this, that, and the other thing. This isn't really like what Marvel publishes. And lately I've started to wonder, is it really that Marvel and light companies have no interest in publishing career-owned projects? Or is it more like they're not interested because people assume not to take it to them unless it's within certain guidelines? So that was probably too long.
No, there are a couple of different questions.
Yeah.
One is about creator-owned comics, which is a copyright business discussion, which is a little different. But generally speaking, the larger companies aren't as interested in creator-owned properties, because if that turns into a hit television series or a hit movie, they don't get a whole lot of residuals from that. So from a business standpoint, it's harder to get a larger company to take a creator-owned thing. Marvel has a creator-owned line called Icon, where they invite guys who are doing their big books to go ahead and publish under Marvel. That's more of a perk than anything else, because there's not a whole lot for Marvel to gain by publishing a bunch of creator-owned books,
Except keeping happy their top-tier people.
Keeping their top guys happy. The other question there is, are Marvel and DC interested in reading or publishing things that aren't the normal thing you see from Marvel and DC? And I think the answer to that is kind of a weird yes and no. Most of the editors don't only read superhero comics and nothing else. I got very burnt out on superhero comics after 6 years of only working on superhero comics. It's the reason I started making books that were superheroes / something else. I mean, when I went to Peter to do Madrox and then X Factor, I said I really want to do a film noir, a detective story. But Marvel won't let me because we do superheroes. So let's take Jamie Madrox and make him a film noir detective, and that way we can do both. That way I can do my film noir thing and I can love that. And Peter's a film noir fan, so that worked out great. And I really want to do a war story, so I created Annihilation, which doesn't have any soldiers in it. It has only superheroes in it. But it's a war story. But if we see something that's not very superhero-like, but it's cool and it's interesting, then we're likely to want to talk to that person that did that and see if they're interested in maybe taking a spin like that on a Marvel character or a DC character. I mean, I think does that answer your question? And then lastly, and anybody else feel free to jump in here, I'm just talking now. But lastly, I think a lot of people don't think to submit. A lot of people do think to submit and figure it goes nowhere. But I think there are plenty of people who don't submit tomorrow, we're going to be